The transport shuttle's engines hummed their final notes as Commander Jalen Ward stepped onto the crystalline platform of Carllo's station. The air tasted different here, cleaner, with an almost metallic undertone that reminded him he was no longer breathing Earth's atmosphere. Purple-tinged sunlight filtered through the station's transparent dome, casting everything in an otherworldly glow that made his human eyes squint. Commander Ward. The voice was precise, measured, completely devoid of the casual warmth humans took for granted. He turned to see his first Thaurin up close. She was tall, nearly 6 feet, with skin the color of pale lavender that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Dark, curly hair framed angular features that spoke of intelligence and control. Her 2 hands were clasped behind her back in a posture of perfect military bearing, and when she moved, it was with the fluid grace of someone who had never doubted their place in the universe. I am Virea Kethmiran, Senior Diplomatic Attaché to the Carllo's Council. I have been assigned as your primary liaison during your tenure here. Her dark eyes studied him with the intensity of a scientist examining a new specimen. Your reputation as a translator and cultural mediator precedes you. Jalen extended his hand in greeting, then caught himself. The briefings had been clear. Thaurin rarely engaged in physical contact outside of ceremonial occasions. He converted the motion into a slight bow instead. The honor is mine, Attaché Kethmiran. I look forward to learning from your people. Something flickered across her features, surprise, perhaps. It was gone too quickly to identify. Your first lesson begins now, she said, turning toward the corridor with sharp, efficient steps. The Thaurin do not learn from others. We analyze, categorize, and adapt useful information. Emotion-based concepts like honor and looking forward are imprecise. As they walked through corridors lined with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, Jalen found himself stealing glances at his guide. There was something captivating about her absolute certainty, the way she moved through her world with such controlled purpose. Yet beneath that facade of perfect logic, he sensed something else, a carefully guarded depth that made him wonder what lay beneath all that beautiful, alien composure. He had no idea how dangerous that curiosity would prove to be. 3 months into his assignment, Jalen had grown accustomed to Carllo's rhythms. The work was challenging, mediating between human intuition and Thaurin logic required a delicate balance he was still learning to master. But it was his partnership with Virea that had become the most intriguing aspect of his new life. She was brilliant, that much was undeniable. Her mind worked like a precision instrument, cutting through diplomatic complexities with surgical accuracy. Yet lately, Jalen had begun to notice small changes in her behavior that seemed decidedly uncharacteristic. Explain to me, she said one evening as they reviewed trade agreements in her office, why humans engage in physical contact as a form of greeting. Her tone was clinical, but her dark eyes lingered on his hands as he gestured. It's about connection, Jalen replied, setting down his data pad. A handshake, a hug, it's a way of saying I acknowledge you as a person worthy of my attention. Inefficient, she stated, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. Physical contact serves no logical purpose in information exchange. Not everything humans do is about efficiency, Virea. The use of her first name had become natural between them, though he noticed how her breath caught slightly each time he said it. Sometimes we do things because they feel good. Because they make us happy. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against the desk in a rhythm that seemed almost nervous. And this happiness, it is valuable to humans despite serving no practical function. The most valuable thing of all. That night, as they walked through the station's observation corridor, their hands brushed as they both reached for the same data crystal. The contact lasted only a second, but Jalen felt electricity shoot up his arm. When he looked at Virea, her pupils were dilated, her breathing shallow. She started, then stopped, her composure reasserting itself like armor sliding back into place. We should continue our work. But she didn't move away immediately, and in that hesitation, Jalen saw something that made his heart race, a crack in the perfect facade, revealing someone who was perhaps more curious about human connection than she dared admit. Yes, he agreed softly, though neither of them moved toward their workstations. We should. The moment stretched between them, fragile and electric, before duty finally called them back to their separate worlds. The question started simple enough. Virea would observe human couples during diplomatic functions, her analytical gaze dissecting their interactions with scientific precision. Then she would corner Jalen afterward, her inquiries growing increasingly personal. The human female touched the male's face, she noted after one reception. What information was she gathering through tactile examination? Jalen paused in his report writing. She wasn't gathering information. She was showing affection. Affection. Virea repeated the word like she was tasting something foreign. Physical contact that serves no practical purpose beyond emotional satisfaction. You make it sound like a disease. Perhaps it is. But her tone held no conviction, and Jalen caught her unconsciously tracing her own cheek with her fingertips. The breakthrough came during a late-night work session. They were alone in the cultural center, analyzing communication patterns between their species. Virea had been unusually quiet, her normal rapid-fire observations replaced by thoughtful silences. Jalen, she said suddenly, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. Do you find Thalrin aesthetically pleasing? The question hung in the air between them. He looked up from his work to find her watching him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. Her dark hair had escaped its usual severe styling, curling softly around her face. The purple undertones of her skin seemed to glow in the dim lighting. Yes, he said simply. Very much so. Something vulnerable flickered across her features. Even though we lack the softness that human females possess. The warmth of your skin tones, the curves that your species finds attractive. Virea. He set aside his work entirely, giving her his complete attention. Beauty isn't a standard. It's recognition. And you. He hesitated, knowing that his next words would change everything between them. You're the most beautiful being I've ever encountered. Her breath caught. For a moment, her perfect composure cracked entirely, revealing someone young and uncertain and desperately hopeful. Then the mask slammed back into place. That is, illogical, she whispered, but her hands were trembling as she gathered her materials. I must return to my quarters. She fled, leaving Jalen alone with the echo of her vulnerability and the growing certainty that he was falling in love with someone who might never believe she was worthy of it. 3 days into their mission, the Varela encountered an unexpected obstacle that would change everything. They were navigating through the Kepler debris field when Carllo's instruments began screaming warnings. Captain, massive gravitational anomaly dead ahead, she called out, her usual calm cracking slightly. The field is collapsing, we have maybe 10 minutes before the asteroids crush anything caught between them. Rafe's training kicked in. Emergency reverse thrust, get us out of here. Negative, Carllo replied tersely. The entry wake destabilized the field behind us. Forward is our only option, but the gap is narrowing too fast for conventional navigation. Then we're trapped, Rafe said, his stomach dropping. Not necessarily, Tizeva interjected, studying her tactical display. There's a possible escape route, but it requires precise coordination. Carllo would need to fly by instinct through shifting debris while Drenya reroutes power in real time to boost our shields. Too dangerous, Rafe decided. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Drenya's voice came through the comm from engineering. Captain, with respect, this is what we do. Trust us. Rafe looked around the bridge at his crew. For the first time since boarding, he saw not defiance in their eyes, but competence. Professional determination. They weren't challenging his authority, they were offering their expertise. What do you need from me? He asked quietly. Tisava's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her features. Monitor our structural integrity. Call out any dangerous stress points so we can compensate. For the next 8 minutes, Rafe watched his crew work with breathtaking precision. Carllo flew through impossible gaps with movements that seemed choreographed with the shifting asteroids. Drenya's voice provided a constant stream of power adjustments, her timing flawless. Ava coordinated their efforts while managing defensive systems. And Rafe? He watched, learned, and called out warnings when sensors detected dangerous structural stress. He wasn't commanding, he was contributing. When they finally cleared the field, the bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. "Excellent work, everyone," Rafe said, and meant it. "That was, impressive doesn't begin to cover it." Carllo turned in her pilot's seat, studying him with new interest. "You didn't panic. And you didn't override our decisions when fear might have demanded it." "You were right," Rafe admitted. "All of you. I've been trying to command through rank instead of earning respect through competence." Ava moved closer to his chair, her violet eyes softer than he'd seen them. "The Zarenth believe leadership is a dance, not a battle. You lead, we follow, but only when the rhythm feels right to both partners." Something in her tone, the way she was looking at him, made Rafe's pulse quicken. "And now?" "Now," she said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "the rhythm is starting to feel right." The tension on the bridge shifted, becoming charged with possibilities that had nothing to do with navigation or command structure. That evening, Rafe found himself in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars and replaying the day's events. The way his crew had worked together, the way they'd finally started to accept him, it felt like a breakthrough, but also like the beginning of something he didn't fully understand. "Mind if I join you?" Tisava's voice was softer than usual, lacking its typical edge of challenge. Rafe turned to find her in casual clothes rather than her uniform, a flowing tunic that somehow made her look even more striking. "Please. I was just thinking about today." She settled beside him on the curved bench, close enough that he could catch the subtle scent of her perfume, something floral with exotic undertones. "You surprised us out there." Most human commanders would have insisted on their original plan, even facing certain destruction. Most human commanders haven't had their authority systematically dismantled by their crew for 3 days straight, Rafe replied with a rueful smile. Ava laughed, a rich, genuine sound he'd never heard from her before. "Is that what you think we were doing? Dismantling your authority? Weren't you?" "We were testing your character," she said, turning to face him fully. "The Alliance didn't assign you to us randomly, Rafe. They chose you specifically because we requested a human captain who could learn, not one who already knew everything." The use of his first name sent warmth through his chest. "And your verdict? You listen. You adapt. You don't let ego override judgment." Her hand moved to rest on his arm, her touch sending electricity through him. "These are rare qualities, especially in someone with your accomplishments." "Ava." He began, but found himself lost as she leaned closer. "My people value strength, but we cherish wisdom more," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "Today, you showed both." When she kissed him, it was with the same decisive confidence she brought to everything else. Rafe responded instinctively, his hands finding the curve of her waist as she pressed against him. She tasted like starlight and promises, and when she pulled back to meet his eyes, he saw desire that matched his own. "Is this appropriate?" he asked, though his hands were already tangling in her dark curls. "By human standards or Zarenth ones?" she asked with a smile that held both mischief and heat. "Because by our standards, a captain who earns respect through merit rather than demanding it through rank is very attractive." She stood and extended her hand to him. "My quarters are more private than the observation lounge." As they walked through the quiet corridors, Rafe realized that everything had changed. Not just between him and Ava, but his entire understanding of command, of leadership, of what it meant to be chosen rather than simply appointed. In her quarters, with the soft glow of starlight through the viewports, Ava showed him exactly what it meant to be valued by someone who gave respect only where it was earned. And Rafe discovered that being chosen was infinitely more powerful than being assigned. 2 weeks later, the Virella encountered its greatest test yet. They were deep in unexplored space when Drenya's sensors detected something that made her call for an immediate senior staff meeting. Unknown vessels approaching from 3 vectors, she reported, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by grim professionalism. Configuration suggests hostile intent, and they're moving to surround us. Carllo pulled up the tactical display. 12 ships, heavily armed. They've been shadowing us for hours, waiting for us to reach this position. It's a trap, Tizeva concluded, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. They've herded us into this sector deliberately. Rafe studied the display, his mind racing through possibilities. The old him would have issued orders, demanded immediate action. But he'd learned something important about leadership over the past month. Options? He asked simply. We could run, Carllo suggested. But they're faster and in position to intercept any escape route. We could fight, Tizeva added. But 12-to-1 odds are not favorable, even with our superior technology. Or. Rafe sensed there was another option they were considering. Drenya leaned forward. There's an unstable binary pulsar in this system. If we could lure them close enough, the gravitational field would disable their engines while our shielding keeps us operational long enough to escape. Extremely dangerous, Carllo noted. The timing would have to be perfect, and it requires each of us to execute our roles flawlessly while under fire. Rafe looked at each of his officers, no, his partners, in turn. Can we do it? Together? Tizeva asked, and there was something in her voice that spoke of more than just professional confidence. Together, Rafe confirmed. The next 30 minutes tested every lesson he'd learned about trust, leadership, and what it meant to be part of a team rather than standing above it. He coordinated their efforts while trusting their expertise, providing support while letting them excel in their specialties. Carllo flew with impossible precision through the pulsar's radiation field. Drenya managed power distribution with split-second timing that defied physics. Tizeva coordinated their defensive systems while providing tactical analysis. And Rafe? He led by listening, commanded by trusting, and proved his worth by enabling theirs. When the last hostile ship tumbled helplessly into the pulsar's gravity well, the bridge erupted in cheers. Later, in the quiet of the ship's galley, Tizeva approached Rafe with a glass of Zarenth wine and something he'd never seen before, a formal salute. You're not the strongest captain I've served under, she said, her voice carrying the weight of ceremony. You're not the most experienced, and you're certainly not the most traditional. She held the salute as the rest of the crew gathered around them. But you're the first human captain we'd willingly follow into a war zone. You've earned something that can't be assigned or demanded, you've earned the right to lead us. As she finally lowered her hand, Rafe realized he'd found something he'd never known he was looking for. Not just command, but partnership. Not just authority, but trust. He was their captain now, not because the Alliance had said so, but because they had chosen him to be.